Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1045A, and today's date is August 10th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Everyday American is Tapped Out, Spending is Way Down. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we have been watching the market, we've been watching gold, and we can see gold is on the move once again. The market is flat today, not really moving up or down, not really moving anywhere. And this is going to continue on like this, where gold is going to continually make more and more new highs, and most likely the market's going to stay flat. Because what we're seeing is that this system that the government, the central bankers have created, it's run its course. Everything is a complete illusion. What's really happening in the economy is it's deteriorating on all sectors. And we get these reports that come out letting us know that the job market is good. We're getting information that hiring is rebounding, that there are more open positions now. And I've explained this before because the JOLTS survey came out that showed that in June, and remember, this report is 1 month delayed to the payrolls report, the number of jobs opening rebounded from a revised 5.514 million to 5.624 million, missing the expectations of 5.675 million. But what we're seeing here is that hiring is actually slowing right now compared to a year ago. And because we have open positions doesn't mean that companies are going to actually hire. Because what they do is they keep these open recs, they tell people to interview, but never to fulfill the jobs. Because each department, if they just say, all right, we don't need this rec, because they won't let us hire, they'll never get it back. This is how the departments see this. So they keep the open rec, they keep interviewing the people, but from the top they tell them, listen, you can do all of this, but we're on a hiring freeze right now. But we do have all these open positions, which is, again, fake, phony, and false. And what we're looking at is we've seen this before. Back in 2008, it looks like the employment market peaked at a certain level, and that was back in 2006, going into 2007. The market came crashing down. If we fast forward to 2014, 2015, we see the same thing. We see the same exact pattern. And it looks like the system is mimicking what happened back in 2008. We're headed for a disaster. Now, Bank of America came out with a report showing that the American people, they're just tapped out. Spending is slowing. Now, Friday, we're going to get the retail sales report. It will be released. But when we look at the Bank of America report ahead of time here on their credit and debit card data, they're showing that consumer spending slowed in July. With retail sales, ex-autos are down by 0.3% month on month. And these, again, are seasonally adjusted, so this is a lot worse. And this follows the flat pace in June for retail sales. Now, when the retail sales report comes out Friday, most likely it's going to show that spending is decreasing. And when we look at this, we see that fast food has been slowing since the recession. It is growing at a slower pace, and it looks like people are not going out to eat as much. The other thing that we see slowing is spending on home improvement and home goods. Now, traditionally, this is the most visible concurrent and slightly lagging indicator to the U.S. housing sector. Sales at home improvement stores tumbled in July, and they were down 3.4% year on year. Now, we're going to have to wait for the retail sales report to come out. We'll see what the spending is. And of course, most of the time, the government will add in multiple seasonal adjustments to pump the numbers up to where they need them to go. But when we look at it, we will know right off the bat, because we will cut through all of that and find out the truth of what people are actually doing. Now, this report is showing people are using their debit credit cards, mostly credit cards, because many people just don't have the cash to go out and purchase goods. And it's going to get harder and harder as time goes on, because in today's world, most of the people are living on credit. If you took away the credit cards today, most people would not be able to survive. Most people would not be able to buy their food. They wouldn't be able to make it. And this shows us that this economy can't move forward like this. It's impossible. It cannot work. Even the post office, they have been in trouble for a very long time. And the U.S. Postal Service in the third quarter, they came out with their numbers. They have lost $1.6 billion. They're going to need a bailout. And if we look at everything is going to need a bailout. Fannie and Freddie, if there's a crisis, they need a bailout. The Postal Service needs a bailout. The banks are going to need bail-ins because we know they can't weather a financial crisis. They have no cash on hand. And another problem is public pensions. A report came out, and it was released, which pointed out that the American Academy of Actuaries and the Society of Actuaries killed a report that would have warned about the implications of lowering long-term expected returns on pension assets. Now, fund managers, they have been counting on a 7 to 8% return. Well, we know that's completely impossible. And they're going to have to readjust this to a 4% or lower return. And I'm going to go with the lower side. But let's be conservative and say it's 4% that they have to readjust. Now, Gross, who runs the $1.5 billion Janus Global Unconstrained Bond Fund, said on August 5th that California's public employees retirement system, the largest in the U.S., they're reporting gains of less than 1% of the fiscal year ended June 30th. Now, what happens if all the federal, state, and local pensions took the advice of Mr. Gross, who said everyone needs to readjust? What would happen? Well, the results would not be pleasant. Right now, public pensions are currently at $2 trillion underfunded, $4.5 trillion of assets for $6.5 trillion of liabilities. If we adjusted the return down from 7.5% used by most pensions to 4%, suggested by Mr. Gross, we have found that public pensions, they are underfunded closer to $5.5 trillion, or over 2.5 times more than the current estimates. And that's being very conservative right now. This is a disaster waiting to happen here. And this is just the public pensions. Think about all the other private pensions. When this system collapses and everyone realizes what's going on, it's going to be anarchy, because people are not going to realize what is happening. They're going to say, well, I have this pension. What happened to it? Why aren't I receiving it? And it's going to be a huge disaster. Now, out in Saudi Arabia, we see they're having their own problems. Because of oil prices going down so low, the Saudi Arabia economy, well, it is collapsing. And what we're seeing right now, there's a huge slowdown in construction. And they had to lay off and abandon about 1,000 of their foreign workers. And they can't pay them. They have no way to get home. There's no jobs. And they're stuck in labor camps. They're not even getting any type of back pay. Nothing. They haven't been paid for quite a while. And in these labor camps, the conditions are horrific. There's no air conditioning. The temperatures reach about 122 degrees. And there's about 16,000 laborers from India, Pakistan, that are out in this area suffering. And we're going to see this spread across the world because as the system comes down, how are people going to work? Watch each one of these countries. Watch how their economic system crashes. Watch what comes next and then what comes after that. And you can take that information and say, okay, there's no food in Venezuela. People don't have jobs in Saudi Arabia. They're left out in labor camps. People can't get their money out of their banks in Cyprus, in Greece. Put all of this together. When the system breaks down, what do you think is going to happen here in the United States? You're not going to be able to get money out of the banks. Pensions will be gone. Food will be hard to come by. Everyday supplies will be hard to come by. People will be sleeping out on the streets. People will not have jobs. They will not know what's happening. We'll see bank holidays. And they'll talk about quantitative easing. They'll talk about bank holidays. They'll talk about bail-ins. They'll talk about extraordinary measures. They'll talk about a lot of things while the people are suffering. Now, Deutsche Bank, after the stress test, they have a huge problem on their hands. Deutsche Bank has the highest potential capital shortfall, 19 billion euros. What they're saying is their massive capital gap is larger than its entire market cap. And we can see right now that this situation is not good. And this is not the only bank. We have the Italian banks. We have the other European banks. We have the U.S. banks. We have Freddie and Fannie. When the system cracks and things rapidly fall apart, the banks are insolvent. They will not be able to keep their doors open. Governments will not bail them out. This is where they'll go in to your account. This is where they'll go in to take your funds. But don't worry, the insolvent bank that has no funds to stay open will give you their bank stock. They will trade you your currency, your digital currency, for the bank stock. Now, you can't do anything with the bank stock for many, many years. So you'll be stuck with bank stock in your account. It'll be a digital number, of course. And then they'll say, well, each week you can only take out $200 or so, or $300 or so to live. You cannot transfer any funds out of the country. You can't transfer any funds to any bank right now. Everything has to stay where it is. And this is why I've been saying, and this is my personal opinion, and this is what I do, is only leave what you need in the bank to pay your bills. You will need the cash on hand when everything starts to go south. You will need gold and silver. You will need supplies to barter. You'll need a weapon to protect your family. You will need all of this. Just take a look around the rest of the world. Take a look around and what is happening. It starts on the outer edges and works its way in. We saw this back in 1929 in the Great Depression. Europe was a disaster. Many of the countries around the world were a disaster. The United States was the only country saying everything is fine here. And then slowly but surely, after each one of these countries around the world collapsed, it ended up here in the United States. This is what we're seeing now. And it's just a matter of time. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.